It's European Finals week and the countdown starts here. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. Okay, so in this video we are going to do kind of a high level preview of both of the European finals that are on this week, both the Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup. We will focus more on the Champions Cup, and I make no apologies for that. I know more about the teams, and I think people are more interested in that one as well. But what we will do is, when it gets closer to the games themselves and we have teams out, etc., so probably Thursday or Friday, and imagine Friday we're going to have definitely teams for the Champions Cup out, we will do a preview of each of the games that focuses more on the players and stuff like that, the selections, because there's no point in doing that now when we don't have teams. So we're going to more look at teams' history in the competition, how they got to the final, and also their current form as well, current place in the domestic league, and past meetings as well, if there are some in the competition. So we're going to start with the Champions Cup, and I said the main focus of the video is going to be this one as well. So Champions Cup final, it's at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's on Saturday the 25th of May, and kickoff is 2:45 BST. It's on TNT Sports, France TV, beIN Sports, ITV, Super Sport, RTE, and EPCRugby.tv. So plenty to choose from in terms of where you're going to watch it. It's Leinster versus Toulouse, two huge heavyweights in this competition, and the two teams that have won it the most as well between them. Leinster 4 times previous champions, Stade Toulouse, or Toulouse 5 times champions, and the Kings of Europe. I think even if Leinster beat them and draw level with them on 5, not many people would argue the fact that Toulouse would still hold that title as the Kings of Europe, simply because their long history in this competition of getting to semi-finals and finals, etc. So let's have a look actually at their history in terms of finals first of all. So Leinster have appeared in 7 finals. They won 4 of them, and they've been runner-up in 3. So last time they won the final was 2018 against Racing 92. They won 15-12, and since then they've been runners-up 3 times. Once in 2019, and then the last 2 years, 2022 and 2023. 2019 they lost against Saracens, and 2022-23 they lost both times against La Rochelle. Toulouse then have won the competition 5 times, and they've been runner-up 3 times. So the last time that Toulouse won was in 2021, so more recently than Leinster, and there they beat La Rochelle in the final 22 points to 17. Toulouse have been runners-up twice, and the last time they were runners-up was a long time ago. It was actually 2004, is that right? No, sorry, 2008. They were runners-up in 2004 and 2008. They lost in 2004 against Wasps, 27 points to 20. And in 2008, they lost to Munster, 16 points to 13. But they've always been there and thereabouts. And a win for Leinster at the weekend would draw both teams kind of equal on finals, at least, because then it would be 5 wins each and 3 runners-up spots each. But if Toulouse get that win, it'll just cement the fact that they are the Kings of Europe, like 6 times winners and only twice runners up. That would be a 75% win ratio in finals, which is absolutely outstanding. So that's kind of the history in the tournament. Possibly the 2 biggest names in the tournament. When I was growing up, it was Munster and Toulouse were the big 2, at least for me, from an Irish perspective. But in more recent years, Leinster have kind of taken over that mantle from Munster, but Munster showing signs that maybe they're going to be coming back up to that level in next year and beyond as well. So maybe Leinster have to strike while the iron's hot. But that's our history, between the two. Next, then we're going to go through kind of the how they've done in the last few years as well in the competition. So we're going to go back as far as 2018, the 2018 final, because that was the last time that Leinster won the competition. I think 2017 was actually the last time that one of these two teams hasn't appeared in the final. I'm pretty sure that's right, but we'll see as we go through anyway. So the 2017-18 final. So first of all, Toulouse didn't qualify for the competition, which is pretty much unheard of. It was crazy when that happened. But Leinster made the final and they beat Racing 92, 15 points to 12. So that's actually the last time that Leinster lifted the trophy. They beat the Scarlets and Saracens in the knockout stages as well on their way to lifting the trophy. Then on to the 2018-19 season. So in this one, Toulouse beat Racing 92 in the quarterfinal. Leinster beat Ulster narrowly, actually, in the quarterfinal. And then in the semi-finals, Leinster beat Toulouse. And that's kind of you'll see that's a bit of a theme. These two teams meeting in semi-finals and Leinster coming out on top. But as in the last couple of years, Leinster go on to the final. They lose the final. They lost the final 20 points to 10 to Saracens. On to then the 2019-2020 competition. So Toulouse, they beat Ulster in the quarterfinals, 36 points to 8. Then they lost the Exeter Chiefs, 28 points to 18. And this is actually one of the finals where neither of the teams actually appeared. Toulouse getting the semi-final. Leinster actually lost to Saracens in the quarterfinal, 25 points to 17. And Exeter went on to lift the trophy, beating Racing 31 points to 27 in the final. So this is of recent, since the last time Leinster won. I think this is going to be the only final that we're going to see where neither of these teams appeared. On to then the 2020-21 final. So in this one, we'll start with Leinster. Leinster, first of all, got a bye over Toulon. I'm pretty sure it was some kind of COVID-related thing there. Then Leinster beat Exeter in the quarterfinal, 34 points to 22. They then lost to La Rochelle, 32 points to 23. And that was kind of the beginning of La Rochelle having the wood over Leinster in knockout rugby in this competition. Toulouse, they beat Munster 40 points to 33 in Thomond Park, to get through the round of 16. Then they beat Clermont 21 points to 12. Then they beat Bordeaux 21 points to 9. And then they won the final 22 points to 17. So that was the last time that Toulouse lifted the trophy, and beating La Rochelle there as well. That's a triumvirate in recent years. Toulouse, La Rochelle, and Leinster, they've all been thereabouts in this competition, but Toulouse, of the two in the final, the last to lift the trophy. Then we go on to 2 years ago, so 2021-22. So we start with Toulouse. So they, this was 2 legs in round of 16, which is an experiment, that only basically existed for 1 year and got scrapped. So they beat Ulster by 1 point over 2 legs. And interestingly, if it had just been a 1-leg thing, then they would have actually been knocked out in the round of 16. Well, if the first game only counted, that is. Quarterfinals then, they beat Munster on penalties, and then they get to the semi-final, and that's where they met Leinster. So Leinster, they beat Connacht in the 2 legs in the round of 16. Then they beat the Leicester Tigers, 23 points to 14, but I kind of remember it being, comfortable enough for Leinster, even though on the scoreboard it wouldn't say so. And then Leinster beat Toulouse comfortably 40 points to 17 before going on to lose the final to La Rochelle narrowly 24 points to 21. And then last year, we'll have a look at that now. So Toulouse, first of all, beat the Bulls 33 points to 9 in the round of 16. Then they beat the Sharks 54 points to 20. And then they faced Leinster. Leinster beat Ulster 30 points to 15 in the round of 16. Then Leicester 5 points to 24, much more comfortably than the season before. And then 41 points to 22, they beat Toulouse in that semi-final before going on to narrowly lose to La Rochelle in the final, 27 points to 26. So a lot of themes coming around, in the last 2 years. La Rochelle always seem to dump Leinster out, and Leinster always seeming to dump Toulouse out in the last couple of seasons at least. But when we look at this season, maybe those things are changing. So if we have a look now at how both teams reach the final. So we're going to start with Leinster. In the pool stages, they got a measure of revenge against La Rochelle, winning over in Stade La Rochelle in the opening game, 16 points to 9, as probably Leinster's first decent performance of the season, honestly, because they looked very, disjointed up to that point in the URC, and then they produced, a fantastic performance. It wasn't the kind of barnstorming Leinster that we maybe, are more used to, but they dug in and they really ground out that win and showed that they could win in a different way as well and win a tight game. So that boded well for them. Then next, 37 points to 27 against a second string Sales Sharks team. So Leinster kind of struggled early on, then they pretty much had the game won, and then Sharks threatened to come back at them, scoring some second half tries, and Leinster falling away in the second half of Champions Cup games has been another theme over the last couple of seasons as well. Next, then we have a much more comfortable win against Stade Francais, 43 points to 7, and then to round off, to get that top seeding from the pool, they went to Welford Road and they beat Leicester Tigers 27 points to 10. And again, probably of the pool stages, Leinster's 2 away performances were much the better in terms of not just the results but the performances themselves. On to then the round of 16, a rematch against the Tigers, but this time it was at the Aviva Stadium, and Leinster won fairly comfortably there, 36 points to 22. On to the quarterfinals then, another meeting again with La Rochelle, and another comfortable win for Leinster, again in the Aviva Stadium, 40 points to 13, and probably Leinster's peak of the season, at least so far, their best performance, and probably around a period where the middle of April, the beginning of April, middle of April, where they were looking much better than they are actually recently. On to then the semi-finals. So Leinster 20 points to 17. This one in Croke Park, a huge occasion for not just Leinster but for rugby as well, and for Northampton too, to get to play in such a famous stadium where it was 2009 was the last time that we had a club rugby game there. And Leinster looked like they were cruising, and then again fell away drastically in that second half. And Northampton, if they had got the ball out of that last ruck where they were on the attack, rather than Leinster getting over the ball to win a penalty, they would have been in for a try, and Leinster were not going to come back from there. But as it was, Leinster held out and they made it to the final. But it means that a lot of people are a bit apprehensive going into Saturday's final. Now let's have a look at how Toulouse got there. So Toulouse started off 52 points to 7 against Cardiff, the opening game for them in the pool. And it's one thing I would say, I'm glad now that the whole thing of the winner of the Shields in the URC. Qualifying for the Champions Cup has ended now, so this year we won't have that because Cardiff weren't up to the level to compete in this competition this year. And the good thing is out of that is that Ospreys have actually been very competitive this year. They may not qualify for the Champions Cup, but they're up to the level where you'd expect if they did that they'd put in a better showing than Cardiff did. But yeah, a very good win to start for Toulouse. Then Harlequins, they gave them a spanking as well at the Twickenham Stoop, 47 points to 19. Onto then their next game, another comfortable away win, 48 points to 24 against Ulster. And then to round off, another, again, fairly comfortable win, 31 points to 19 against Bath. And Bath at the time were going really well in the Premiership too, but Toulouse are just a different animal in Europe. Next then, we get to the round of 16. So coming up against Racing, 92, and a fairly easy win again for Toulouse, 31 points to 7. On to then their quarter-final, a stonking win, 64 points to 26 against an Exeter Chiefs side that probably, overachieved this year, honestly, because last year they made a semi-final and they lost to La Rochelle, but they looked really good all the way through the competition. This year, having completely rebuilt their squad, most people thought that they were maybe going to just be pool fodder. So they did really well to get as far as they did. But then, they came up against a really class side, and what we thought would happen to them in the pool stages finally happened to them in that quarter-final. On to then the semi-final. So Toulouse again, 38 points to 26 against Harlequins. They raced out to, a big lead in the first half. Quins then came back at them strong in that second half, but then Toulouse were able to go again and pull away. And that's something, when we look at the semi-finals between Leinster and Toulouse, the difference, and something that we've seen with Leinster as well in recent years, is that when teams come back at Leinster recently, and I'm talking about the likes of La Rochelle and even Northampton in that one, when they come back at Leinster and they get on top, Leinster find it very difficult to actually take that momentum back and go again the way Toulouse did against Quins. So, that's something that Toulouse have up their sleeve, I think, over Leinster. And it's one of the reasons why Toulouse are the favourites going into this final. Leinster have been the favourites going into, the previous two finals where they lost both of them against La Rochelle. So this week they get to be underdogs, but it doesn't mean that, just because of that they're going to win. Toulouse are favourites for a reason. They've been much the best, the better of the two teams throughout the competition in terms of just consistency of performance. Yes, they've won most of the games comfortably, and some people would say they haven't been tested, but I would counter that and say that Toulouse have been at a level where, very few teams will be able to test them anyway. So Leinster need to get up to that level and provide that test to them, because if they don't, then it's going to maybe be another comfortable win for Toulouse in the final. So that's how the two teams ended up in the final. Now we're going to look at, where they are in their domestic leagues and, their last couple of results as well. So first of all, Toulouse in the top 14, they sit top of the pile, having recently overtaken Stade Francais at the top there. So on 74 points to Stade Francais 71. So, really good for them in terms of potentially going for that double of top 14 and Champions Cup as well. And at this stage, you'd have to say they're favourites to lift both of those trophies. In terms of Leinster then in league position, they were, first in the league for a long time. They slipped down to second place, a couple of rounds ago, and then last week, or just gone this weekend, they slipped down to third place as well. So they're, heading in the opposite direction really to Toulouse. And, yes, you can talk about some of the selections, etc., that have led to that, sending, not a brilliant squad down to South Africa. certainly a better squad than they sent last year, but with actually worse results. But also, against Ulster as well, they decided to rest most of their players, and that didn't work out too well for them either. Narrow defeat against Ulster, and Ulster were definitely the better of the two teams there as well. So we'll have to see whether resting those players is actually going to help in the final or not. For me, I'd rather see the players go in battle hardened, because I'm very worried about the fact that they keep dropping off at the end of games, and is it match fitness or what's going on with it? I don't know. Again, I'm not like a rugby coach or whatever, so I can't say what it is, but it is worrying, whatever it is. But that's where the two teams are in their domestics. And then if we look at their last couple of results as well, so if we start with Toulouse, that 2 rounds ago in the top 14, they beat Stade Francais 49 points to 18 to claim that top spot ahead of them. And then last time out, then they beat Montpellier 29 points to 22. But we have to remember as well, it wasn't just Leinster that rested players. Toulouse rested players as well in that one too. So both teams trying to keep their their frontline players as fresh as possible for the final. So we can't really point at Leinster and say that would be the reason why they lost, because Toulouse have done pretty much the same thing as well. Maybe not to the extent of Leinster, but they certainly, made sure that their real top stars, didn't play against Montpellier. Then if we look at Leinster's last 2 rounds, so they had, first of all, a really good win against the Ospreys, 61 points to 14, and that's the last time most of the players that we're going to see at least starting on Saturday have turned out for Leinster. And then last time then out up in the Kingspan against Ulster, they lost narrowly, so it was 20 something to 20, 23 points to 21. There we go. So Ulster getting a late penalty, and Cooney just with a brilliant kick as well from just inside the Leinster half to win that game for Ulster. And again, Leinster, they dropped behind there, and they never looked like getting anywhere near, coming up the other end and getting a score to potentially win the game. And that's, we saw it in the finals as well against La Rochelle the last 2 seasons. They get ahead, they get pegged back again, then they drop behind, and they can't score for whatever reason. They can't score in those final 20 minutes or so of the game when they really need to, and that's something they're going to have to address, in the final. If I feel if they've got any chance, because they're not going to be able to defend like a 7-point or 3-point lead that they have it going into those final 20 minutes. They're going to have to be able to produce scores themselves as well to kind of, keep Toulouse at arm's length to have really any chance, I think, of lifting the trophy. And that means they've got to have impact from the bench. And you look at the Leinster bench normally, and you're going to see the likes of Kelleher on there. You're going to see Healy, Ala Toa. We might have James Ryan on there, for the weekend, depending on his match fitness. We're going to have, probably McGrath on there. Who else then? Probably Frawley is going to be on there too. And, Conan's going to be on there as well. And then, we don't know who's going to fill the other slots, but that's kind of my guess at the major makeup of that bench. And you look at all those players and think they're all, like, individually, they're all excellent players. I mean, they come on, they seem to all have, good contributions to the team, but still the team performance in terms of putting points on the board would say that they're actually not having the impact that you think they're having. So that's something that Leinster are definitely going to have to address for this game. And, as I said, we're going to talk more about the players on each of the teams when we have the team. So we leave that aside for the moment. So really the only thing that we need to come down to now is who do I think is going to win the game. So I'm going to make a prediction now, and then I'm going to make a prediction once I've seen the teams. And it may be pretty much the same prediction, but we'll see how things change during the week. So Leinster, they've been in the last two finals. They lost the last two finals. Their form coming into this is nowhere near as good as it was for those last two finals either. And on the other hand, you have Toulouse, who've lost to Leinster in the semi-final last 2 years and lost, very heavily as well. Like it's 40 odd points to whatever, something in the teens or whatever, the low 20s. So, 20 points difference between the teams in at least in those two semi-finals. But then you look at them this year and you think in the whole of Europe, Toulouse are easily the form team. Other teams have had like patches. We saw the Saints, going on a good run. We saw La Rochelle as well, at times, producing really good results, but they haven't been up anywhere near the level that they have been the last two seasons. We talked about Leinster already, where they basically, I think for Leinster this year, the peaks have probably been higher than last year, but troughs have been lower and they've been wider as well. And given all of that, I've got to, even though I'm a Leinster fan, I've got to say that for me, the pick for the winner of the final at this stage is going to be Toulouse. So that's a look at the Champions Cup. We're now going to quickly cover the Challenge Cup. So we're going to, have a look first of all at the runners and riders, as it were. So the final this year is going to be Gloucester against the Hollywood Bet Sharks, or the Sharks. So, two teams who aren't doing very, apart from the run in this competition, both teams have had very poor seasons. There's no kind of sugarcoating it. Both pretty lowly down in their respective leagues, and for a long time now, no chances of making the playoffs of the domestic leagues either. So this was basically all or nothing for them getting to this final, and one of them now has a chance to lift the trophy. So the final is on Friday the 24th of May. It's an 8 p.m. kickoff. It's at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's on TNT Sport, France TV, beIN Sport, EPC Rugby, and Super Sport. So in Ireland, we don't actually have a domestic, TV channel that's actually showing the game, which is, a little bit disappointed. Would have liked to seen it maybe, on Virgin Media or something like that, but it's not going to be on there. So going to have to find another way to watch the game. So on this one, we're not going to go through the detail that we did for the Champions Cup. We're not going to go back so many years, etc. We're just going to have a look at how both teams did in Europe last year and how they got to the final and how they're doing domestically as well. So if we first of all look at how these teams did last year. So both of these teams were actually in the Champions Cup last year, and they both qualified for the round of 16, and that was as far as both of them went. So Gloucester, they actually almost upset La Rochelle, 29 points to 26. They came so close to knocking out the defending champions, and if they had, the whole competition would have just ended up so completely differently. Especially, Leinster probably would have fancied themselves in the final against anyone else, but just because La Rochelle had gone out at that stage does not mean that Leinster would even made the final. Because if you're changing one thing like that, butterfly effect, etc. But yeah, Gloucester, really good performance there, having now not looked amazing in the pool stages. And then the Sharks, who actually were in the same pool and finished higher up in the pool, they got through the round of 16, a 50 points to 35 win against Munster, and then they got to the quarterfinal then. So really good win, comprehensive win against Munster, and then a comprehensive defeat against Toulouse, 54 points to 20, and that was a taste for the Sharks, first time in European competition, and they did fairly well, and I'm glad now that they got to a final, because I want to see the South African teams and the South African players embracing the European competitions and realizing how big these competitions can be. Yes, the Challenge Cup is tiny compared to the Champions Cup in terms of the interest in it and etc. and the prestige of winning it, but it's still a major trophy in European rugby, and if the Sharks can take that, maybe that's going to breathe something in them as well, and hopefully we don't see what we saw with the Bulls, where they were sending a second string team, and there was many reasons about that, and I don't agree with the amount of stick that they got for doing it, because there were a lot of reasons outside their control why they did it. But I think as well, the English media just at times certainly have it out for the South African team, so any chance they get to kind of stick the boot in, and that was a big chance for them to do that. But the Sharks have done well through this, like domestically, as I said, they've had a terrible season, very similar to Gloucester as well, and we're going to look at how both teams actually got to this final before we look at their recent form as well. So first of all, I'm going to start with Gloucester. So Gloucester, first up, not an amazing win, but they got the win, which is the important thing, against Black Lion, and that was 15 points to 10. So Black Lion, one of the invited teams to fill in the numbers, because the Premiership last year basically imploded and lost a bunch of teams, so we needed some invites in, and it's nice to see those teams coming in as well. I think they add a lot to this competition. But Gloucester start with a not very impressive win, then better performance really back at Kingsholm against Clermont, where they won 28 points to 17, and then that game against Edinburgh, where they just about won the game, 21 points to 20. And I think Edinburgh would be kicking themselves in that one. That was certainly one that got away from them. But Gloucester just showing that little bit more nous compared to Edinburgh, and a will to win. And maybe that's going to, be something that they rely on in the final as well. And then to round out their pool stages, 35 points to 5 against Castra. On to the round of 16 then. They play Castra again. This time it's a bit closer, 30 points to 25, but still Gloucester marching on from there. Then into the quarterfinals, 23 points to 13 against Ospreys. Ospreys have been a bit of a revelation in terms of the Welsh sides this year, but it's a step too far for them. But they can be proud of having got to a quarter final. But Gloucester again, just having that nous, I thought they controlled the game really well to make sure they came through with the win. And then their semi-final, 40 points to 23 against a Benetton side at the time, who were in really good form and would have been at that point. I felt like Benetton, they've shown that they can perform away, and they needed just a big performance in that game to get to a final, and maybe they would have been favourites to lift the trophy if they did. But Gloucester again, with that performance, that meant that Benetton really didn't come all that near to them. Gloucester looked comfortable in that second half, and the scoreline kind of shows that as well. So that's how Gloucester got to the final. Now let's have a look at how the Sharks got there. So Sharks, first of all, their opening game at Kings Park, much more comfortable than Gloucester's, 45 points to 5 against Pau. Then fellow South African team, the Cheetahs, they lose against them. So Cheetahs, another invited team, won 32 points to 19 against the Sharks. So that probably results, stung the fact that, the Cheetahs, were when the Sharks come into the URC, the Cheetahs were one of the teams that actually left. So that was kind of an interesting thing there as well, where you have kind of that rivalry, because the Cheetahs and the Sharks both used to be Super Rugby teams as well. So there would have been a rivalry from that point too. And, the Cheetahs certainly would have loved to have gotten that win over them. And it made it a little bit more difficult, I think, for the Sharks in terms of their knockout stages than maybe they thought it would have been. But then they bounced back against the Onyx Rugby, 38 points to 7, pretty comprehensive win. Then after that, another fairly easy win for them to round out the pool stages, 29 points to 9 against the Dragons. And at that stage, the Sharks, I'm pretty sure, were still at the bottom of the table, and the Dragons were a few places above them. The Dragons certainly started the season much better than the Sharks did, but then the Sharks, turned it around and flipped that script in the second half of the season. On to round of 16 then. Another fairly comfortable win, 47 points to 3 against Zebre. Quarterfinal, a little more difficult this time, 36 points to 30 against Edinburgh. But Edinburgh did score 2 tries in the last 10 minutes to make the scoreline look a little bit closer than it actually was, in terms of, the Sharks looked like they were in control really going into that final quarter. And I'm pretty sure one of Edinburgh's last try was the last act of the game as well. So there was no actual chance of them coming over the top of them. But the semi-final was much closer. 32 points to 31 against Clermont. And, this one was a bit of a nail-biter really for the Sharks. They were losing at halftime, 28 points to 18. And in that second half then clawed their way back. And last 10 minutes, Vincent Cock, with about 20 minutes ago, he got over. And then Mapimpi over on 70 minutes as well. And, that was just enough for them to seal the victory. But, against a team, Clermont as well, who always take Europe seriously, it was a serious win for the Sharks there. So that's how both teams ended up then here. Sorry, let me just double check, because I clicked on something there. I just want to make sure that we did just do their semi-final and not the quarterfinal. So let me just double check. Yeah, that was obviously their semi-final. Yeah. So, yeah, kind of coming into the semi-final, the Gloucester certainly looked like the team who have controlled their fixtures a little more easily in the knockout stages than the Sharks have. But the Sharks have that ability to rip the script up and score tries and bursts, and that's the kind of thing you need when you're going into a final. I'd say that Gloucester are probably the favourites for this final, honestly, and so the Sharks, they've got to have something there. Obviously, they've got tons of Springboks in the team, and they sent them all as well to England a week early as well, so that they played a weakened team in the last round of the URC at the weekend in order to prepare for the final. But both teams had not great results in recent domestic rounds, so we'll have a look at that now. So if we look at, first of all, the Premiership, so Gloucester at the moment are sitting in ninth place in the Premiership, and they are 13 points behind 8th place Leicester, and they're well above Newcastle, who only have 5 points down there at the bottom. But their last couple of fixtures, again, I need to pull them up here if I can. Yeah, here they are here. Okay, so 2 rounds ago, they lose 90 points to 0 against Southampton. Southampton, top of the table, absolutely destroyed them. More than a point a minute getting conceded by Gloucester. Then they played bottom of the table Newcastle, and they absolutely hockey them 54 points to 14. So it's hard to tell in terms of the what's going on there. And apologies if you can hear somebody's revving engine out the window at the moment. So apologies for any interference that that's going to cause. But yeah, so very contrasting results for Gloucester. Then if we go on to the Sharks, so the Sharks, they lose against Cardiff in round 17. That was 14 points to 36 at home, and that was last weekend where they had a much changed side as well. So, none of the big stars there, and a good chance really for Cardiff to get a rare win in South Africa and maybe give them a bounce for next season. And then the week before that, a narrow defeat to Benetton, when that was the last time, again, kind of the first string played, but it was a very good game. It was 24 points to 25, and decent performance from the Sharks. And if they had been coming into the final, maybe on the back of that, you would think that you'd be more confident maybe about them. I know the team who are playing in the final are on the back of that, but still, the team that lost against Cardiff may not be the same players, but they were wearing the same jersey. So that's a kind of look at the Challenge Cup, and it just remains to predict who's going to win this one. So Gloucester, I feel, are definitely the favourites, but I don't know about the Sharks. For whatever reason, through most of the season, I've had a feeling about them. Even when they were doing badly, I could see just, I love stats, looking at their stats and how they're performing in different areas. I could see that the fundamentals were there for, a decent performance. They just weren't putting it together over 80 minutes. They've begun to do that now, and those big names have begun to perform as well. And because of that, then I'm going to go against the bookies, and I'm going to say that the Sharks are going to win that final. Okay, so that's our look ahead to the two European finals at the weekend. As I said, we're going to have a preview of each of the games once we have teams out as well. So probably Thursday for the Challenge Cup and Friday for the Champions Cup. If teams are out earlier than that, I'll try and get them done earlier in the week. I'm also working on a video that may come out this week, again, about Leinster in the build up to the final as well. So I'm hoping to get that out, but work is one of these things where you got to do it. You got to, bills have to be paid. But it means that when I get home in the evening, I don't have that much time to actually work, put in the amount of work that means finding, it's one where I'm going to be using video clips and stuff. So finding the video clips that I want to use, putting together all the stats I want to use, putting together all of the graphics I want to go with those as well. And then just collating the information that has to go into those graphics as well that are going to be in the video. So, that's a lot of work to get done. And hopefully I can get it done for it to come out in a reasonable time before the final. If not, it doesn't depend on being watched, or being released before the final. Either it can come out, in a couple of weeks' time as well. It's still going to be, I think, as relevant as it will be in the build-up. I just think that maybe more people will want to watch it in the build-up because there will, it's Champions Cup week, so people want to consume whatever media they can. So if I can, I'd love to get that video out for you guys, but I don't want to do a watered down version of it and be kind of disappointed in the video itself and its reception too. So it'll take as long as it takes, as I say, and that'll come out when it comes out. But as I said, we definitely will have previews, including teams, for each of the finals coming up later on in the week. So let me know, like this point in the week, what your predictions are for both of the finals, and let's see who's going to be right when the dust settles at the weekend.